things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. We're stumbling towards real crisis here. And I hear myself talking about this, and I've talked about it on other platforms and other shows. And I think to myself, am I over egging the omelette here? Am I being over the top? And no, I'm not, because the facts are there. We're having criminals being taken out of prison so innocent people can be put in prison.
Elon Musk being brave and bold as ever by pointing out the authoritarian madness sweeping Britain, which our MSM and elites are conveniently choosing to ignore, has declared the UK is turning into a police state. But two-tier Keir is continuing to double down on his aggressive rhetoric, refusing to acknowledge the vast majority of angry English folk deplore violence, yes, but are highly disturbed by the fabric of our society being torn apart. Yet in Northern Ireland yesterday, he dismissed anyone expressing discontent as racist.
The disorder is intolerable. It is incapable of justification. It's clearly racist. And it does not represent the modern, forward-looking Northern Ireland that I know that this place is. The disorder...
Helpful? No. But will it entrench the deep feeling of barely concealed fury that everyday Brits are having their concerns ignored? Without a doubt. But Slippery Starmer intends to press ahead with his dystopian plan to throw out of jail violent convicted criminals in order to find places for folk who made inappropriate posts on X and Facebook. And oh, he doesn't like being asked about the risk that such a decision poses to the safety of the public.
Prime Minister, is there any risk to the public safety from Operation Early Dawn, either in terms of policing operations that may now be postponed or from prisoners being granted bail who would otherwise not have been?
Well, these decisions are really tough decisions and nobody wants to take them. They're difficult decisions. They're having to be taken for one reason, and one reason only, and that is the terrible inheritance on prisons that we had as an incoming government from the previous government. There was a basic failure, which is a failure to have enough prison places for the number of prisoners that were being sentenced to prison. That is about as basic a failure of government from the previous government as you could possibly have got. We've had to deal with that with the additional strain of the disorder of recent weeks. But as I hope we've been able to demonstrate, we've taken tough decisions. We've been able to prove that if you commit disorder, you can be expected to be put through the criminal justice system quickly, and we will continue in that vein. But I'm not going to pretend that this isn't a challenge. We will take the necessary tough decisions on this, but we should never, ever have been put in a position that we're in today. Thank you so much.
But with respect, you haven't answered, is there a risk to public safety from this new operation?
We are managing that risk, and of course, these are tough decisions. But I think you've seen over the last 2 or 3 weeks the way in which we've approached this, which is to make sure that any risk is mitigated, to make sure that we do have the spaces available for the prisoners that we need to be held in prison. We've managed that against very difficult circumstances, I can tell you. And for my part, I think the response of criminal justice to the recent disorders has been a major reason that the disorders have subsided for the time being. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Well, listening to that, no wonder Elon Musk declared the plan to be Operation Orwell. And Operation Orwell is sending these types of people to prison while paedophiles get no jail time whatsoever. Julie Sweeney, the 53-year-old from Kidsgrove who lived a quiet, sheltered life in Cheshire and is the primary caregiver to her sick husband who made an inappropriate post on Facebook that she instantly regretted. David Spring, the retired 61-year-old former train driver from Sutton who has never been in trouble with the law, even once in his life, but confronted the police at a protest outside Downing Street, even though footage shows that he did absolutely nothing violent. Sellafield worker Lee Joseph Dunn, serving 12 weeks for sharing 3 memes. And now 67-year-old pensioner David Notley of Essex, who has been locked up for 20 months for chanting "You're not English anymore" at police officers. As Darren Grimes pointed out, all this is doing is creating more resentment and feeds the growing narrative that there is two-tier justice in Britain. And once these unfortunate folk who have never made a mistake in their lives until now are inside, locked up, some of them for up to 3 years, look at the reception they can expect.
And people are being told that if they do appear, whether they're pleading guilty or not guilty, they're very unlikely to get bail. And if they do end up in prison, somebody who knows about these things told me that, any right-wing, far-right protester landing up in jail, they can expect a pretty cold reception from what he says are Asian gangs inside prison who will be looking out for them.
As this meme from Alex Armstrong points out, Keir Starmer has been far from consistent on so-called rioters. On one side, he took the knee for the BLM rioters and defined them as being a defining moment. On the other side, you're all racists, go to jail, to the white working class so-called rioters. We know two-tier Keir is making these folk political prisoners to try and shut down dissent. He might be thinking it will work. And in the short term, he is probably right. But the Prime Minister is scarily out of touch with the majority of his population, and that is unlikely to end well. To discuss this further now, it's time for the Uncancelled Interview. And today I am delighted to be joined by the eminent cultural historian, academic, author and political commentator Philip Kiszely, who has found himself investigated for wrongthink. He is now a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, and it is a delight to have him on Outspoken. Philip, thank you so much for being here today. What did you make of Keir Starmer's reaction in Northern Ireland yesterday, which yet again was to shut down any discussion about why there might be discontent on the streets of Britain, and instead to decry anyone really who feels discontent, certainly any of the folk who have been arrested and about to be locked up for posting a meme, a political meme? He simply declared them racist.
Yes, indeed. Well, Dan, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show. It really makes you think, doesn't it, that the first thing you should do when you think about wrongdoing, crime, people who are acting out of character, the first thing you should do is ask why. But that is precisely what the government is not doing. They're not interested in why these things are happening, why people like Julie Sweeney, who's never done anything wrong in her life, is a 53-year-old carer from Cheshire, for God's sake, why she all of a sudden is taking to Facebook and typing crazy, ridiculous, awful things. Sure. But what's going on there? What's happening with her? It's the same in Ireland. I mean, we know that Ireland is changing so rapidly. The cultural change in Ireland is happening at such a rate of knots that people can't keep up. And the truth is, the stark reality is, people are frightened and people are angry. And when you get that combination and you don't listen, the only thing you do is threaten them. It's, as you said before, Dan, it can't end well. These things never end well. We look, you can see precedents throughout recent history, actually. When people aren't listened to, they act up. These threats are so extreme that, as you've said, even Elon Musk is taking notice of them and saying that they're all Orwellian. We are moving towards an Orwellian society. One of the things that we really want, I think, and one of the things that these people want is, one, to be listened to, okay, one, to take their concerns seriously, but also to live in the real world. Because we're not dealing with reality. What Keir Starmer is reacting to is something that frankly isn't real. These people aren't racist. The far right doesn't have any kind of political footing in this country. It hasn't done for years and years and years. There's no force like the National Front or the BNP anymore. People are just frightened and fed up of ridiculously quick cultural change, and they're fed up of not being listened to.
Indeed, I couldn't agree more. And of course, there are going to be real consequences to this decision by Starmer. And let's just be frank, even though the judiciary is meant to be separate from the executive in a Westminster system, we know that it is the clear direction from Starmer, former director of public prosecutions, that is seeing people like Julie Sweeney being locked up. That is going to have a consequence, because we've already seen evidence, Philip, that these criminals, these career criminals who are about to be released early from prison, and actually some of them are not even being jailed at all, even though they have more than 100 convictions, they are already reoffending at higher rates. So actually, society is just going to get more unsafe because of this decision by Starmer to crack down on behaviour by the English working classes.
I mean, this is... it echoes other things that are happening in society. When you give me that scenario there, essentially it's a safeguarding scenario, isn't it? What are you going to do? Are you going to put your politics and identity politics first and say, well, let's get rid of these people we don't want and let's put them in prison? The only way we can really seriously do that, because our prisons are massively overcrowded, is to just let people out. And essentially, that's what they're doing. In the clip you showed before, there was no sense of a serious response to safeguarding. And it makes me think of all the other things that the radical left are pushing through the agenda of our culture at the moment. And I'm thinking particularly about gender, the trans agenda, and education. Okay. There are two things there that's happening. One is affirmation and the other is safeguarding. Affirmation is completely overriding safeguarding. And what we're getting now is this in the criminal justice system. Okay. So my fear, Dan, is that when something dreadful happens, when these people who should be in prison are out of prison and the people who shouldn't be in prison are in prison, when people really get hurt outside and inside, they are not going to acknowledge it. They are not going to do anything about it. Things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. We're stumbling towards real crisis here. And I hear myself talking about this, and I've talked about it on other platforms and other shows. And I think to myself, am I over egging the omelette here? Am I being over the top? And no, I'm not, because the facts are there. We're having criminals being taken out of prison so innocent people can be put in prison. And when I say innocent, yes, okay, they've committed crimes. They've said things on Facebook that they shouldn't say, and maybe they should be punished for it. Okay, I'm okay with that, but they shouldn't be going to prison. Julie Sweeney shouldn't be going to prison.
No, and
it
come
isn't
on,
just
they
her,
have been humiliated on a national scale. They feel deeply embarrassed by what they have written. But surely we should live in a society where, unless you are specifically inciting violence against an individual or an actual place, then you should be able to say whatever you want on social media. Now, look, if the individual platforms which are privately owned decide to remove you, I guess that is a separate conversation. But in terms of criminalizing controversial speech, and the left are loving this at the moment, but be very careful, because this is a slippery slope, and it's a slippery slope into totalitarianism.
I think what's going to happen is, and again, this is one of those things that I never would have said 2 or 3 years ago, but I find myself saying quite a lot now. We are slipping into totalitarianism, and I think what's going to happen is the authorities, and that's how I think of them, the authorities. I think what's going to happen there is that they're going to look at retrospectively at what we've said on Twitter and on Facebook and on, God help us, on television and platforms like this. And they're going to say, and they're going to come to us and say, you said this in 2021, you said this in 2022. It's going to be retrospective. We are in a kind of cultural revolution here, a form of cultural revolution, which is in a way the antithesis of the 60s. That was the last big cultural revolution. What we're seeing here is this. It's not a slippery slope. We're hurtling towards.
Yeah, we're there.
Right.
After
we're
6 weeks.
Yeah, we're hurtling towards
After
it.
6 weeks.
Yeah, I think one of the things is people don't realize. I mean, my father was Hungarian, and when I grew up, I used to go back to Hungary in the 1980s when I was a little boy, and I saw it. I saw the regime there. I saw the anger and fear on people's faces. People wouldn't say anything in public, but as soon as they got behind closed doors, they said it all, and they resented the regime and they hated the regime, and that's what's going to happen here. Don't forget, Starmer and the government is kowtowing to a minority. The majority think as we do, okay? The minority is the loud, vocal, obnoxious minority. These are the people that work in universities, Dan. These are the people
You know about them.
Servants. I know about them. These are the people who work in media. You know about them too,
Oh, yes.
okay? So they're a minority, okay? And they're vocal. The silent majority at the moment is doing nothing. And my fear is that if they carry on doing nothing, it's going to be too late, because once you start down this slippery slope, there's a point of no return. And when you get to that point of no return, I think we're very close to it. When you get to that point of no return in terms of totalitarianism, things move very, very quickly.
Yeah, and they are moving quickly. And actually, I wanted to point out some of the protests that are going on, because of course people are very nervous. They're very nervous to be on the streets. They're very nervous to post on social media platforms. But folk like Douglas Murray and Father Calvin Robinson, who will be here tomorrow, are encouraging English people to continue to get on the streets as long as the protests stay peaceful. But it's a fine line, isn't it? So I want to show you an example of some folk who did that in Bournemouth.
None! I don't want them! I can't have one more house! Refugees don't welcome it anymore!
And again, Philip, I would say there's quite a fine line there, because actually, under this new Orwellian approach, actually, is it considered hate speech? Is it considered inappropriate if folk yelling refugees are not welcome here? But I wanted to point out and link that clip to a post on X of yours that I was quite taken by, where you asked how you felt about being in Labour's Britain in 2024, but you said that you were up for the fight. You said there have been times of late when I've had no fight in me. In January, for example, I didn't care about anything. I couldn't see a future for myself, let alone anyone else. So I understand why people feel so bloody down about authoritarianism, doublethink, censorship, cancellation, victimization, and racist identity politics. We have no choice, though. We can't let the most moronic regime in British history get away with it, nor can we ignore the loons cheering from the sidelines. So given that's how you feel, and I think that's great, and by the way, as you know, we've gone through a very similar experience over the past year in terms of being cancelled and coming back, and in some ways, actually, it's a liberation, isn't it? Because once you are cancelled, you actually have far less to lose in some ways. But what should ordinary folk do who are sitting at home, nervous now about whether to even make a post on Facebook, nervous about whether they can go to a protest march? What can they do? First, though, what is so important about being independent is that I'm only ever going to tell you about products that I use and truly believe in, and that I think can improve your life. So that's why I use Verso. As you may know, I've entered my 40s and I am much more conscious about staying healthy. I think you'll understand if you're in your 40s or 50s, age becomes a much bigger thing. So after a very stressful year, I've decided to think about ways that I can stay fit and as sharp as possible while still living a good life and being busy and engaged. So I'm doing lots of the right things, like exercising, trying to do my diet right. But scientists like David Sinclair have proven that we can now actually reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So for me, I wanted a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing, but one that was backed up by solid evidence. And that solid evidence is behind Cellbean by Verso, which has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels, which is the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now. I take it at the start of the day. I cannot tell you how transformative this product has been. Loads of things are so much easier for me. Fasting, energy, sleeping better. And apparently a lot of this is because Verso and Cellbean has blood sugar regulating effects which lead to fewer cravings. This has taken years off me. I would love you to experience the same thing. And the great news is that Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced, which guarantees you are getting exactly what you pay for. I'm very excited because Verso was the first ever sponsor of Outspoken, that if you head right now to bui.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. You just need to make sure that you enter the coupon code Outspoken when you hit the checkout. I've put the link in our YouTube and Rumble description, but I will repeat, buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken and take years off your life.
Okay, well, first of all, what they shouldn't do is get sacked and end up on the dole for the next 30 years. Okay, I think that's, they've got to be careful. And so what we have to do is we have to think of ways, of strategies and methods of protest which actually work. Okay, and I think we need to be able to know at a particular moment, because this will change all the time, what the line is, how far we can push it. Okay, and I think we need to be able to fight back and say, I was just looking at that clip that you've just posted there, Dan. Okay, that's people waving flags of St. George, okay, and chanting. Think about all of the Saturday hate marches in London and all over the country. People waving Palestinian flags, people waving signs with the Star of David being put in a bin, absolute gross anti-Semitism every week since October the 7th.
And no action taken.
This is a response to a pogrom. Okay, so I think we have to bear that in mind. And I think one of the things that people have to do is they just have to learn, and they have to read, and they have to understand what's going on. And we need to be able to take a lead in that, I think, people who are public figures, who are commentators, and we need to be able to be clever, like Douglas Murray, like Jordan Peterson. And we really need to be able to twist the narrative and show the lies that are happening. And, you know, I'll be out there waving a flag of St. George. I'm more than happy to do that. And I'm happy to stand my ground. And I think if many of us do it, and we do it sensibly, and we don't break the law, they can't lock us all up. The point is, we mustn't be silenced. And it's as I said in that tweet, it's really easy to be despondent and downhearted. You and I know we've been through pretty rough times. I mean, yours was much worse than mine, but there were times in January where I thought I had no future. I thought I couldn't afford to pay my mortgage. I thought I was finished in my career. And I actually visited a car park. I wasn't going to throw myself off the top of it, but I spoke about this in a speech to the New Culture Forum. I was incredibly depressed because I just couldn't see a future for myself. I think generally people feel that way about British culture. It feels as though we're taking something beautiful, we're taking something that we've built for generations and generations, and it seems we're throwing it out and replacing it with crap. And we must be able to rally ourselves and be able to speak in public in a way that's effective. And that isn't throwing abuse, and that isn't, saying the things that people have been saying on Facebook that they've got locked up for. What we should be doing is being clever and being angry and putting our fear aside.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very inspiring, that. But one of the problems is, Philip, we know how entrenched the two-tier justice is under this new government. And I want to talk about this appalling Home Office post on X, which showed the faces of a number of folk who had been arrested over the course of the so-called rioting. There you can see it, which had the headline, "These criminals will feel the full force of the law." Now, of course, that is completely outrageous for a government department to be posting something like that on social media, given that no justice has yet been done. The vast majority of the people in that photo have presumably not been to court, certainly not been found guilty. And as Lee Anderson, the Reform UK MP, wrote on X, "Innocent until proven guilty." Well, it appears not since Labour took charge. Check this tweet from the Home Office sent out last week, which in my opinion is disgraceful. Then check out my letter to the Home Secretary. "We cannot allow the state to assume anyone's guilt until they've had a fair trial. They are not criminals until they've been found guilty. Hopefully our judges will see through this." And sure enough, Lee Anderson has written to the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, making this point. But Philip, to me, what this shows is just how much in lockstep Slippery Starmer's government is going to be with the blob, the civil service. And it's terrifying.
It's really frightening. First of all, we don't live in France. Okay, we're not guilty before we're proven innocent. It's the other way around. Yeah. So I'm so appalled that the Home Office has said this. But the really, really appalling thing is that I'm not surprised at all. Right? I'm not surprised at all that they will do that, because if you think about it, it's not just about two-tier policing, is it? It's about two-tier everything. Okay, so if you have certain political opinions, you are a second-class citizen. It's getting more and more the case that if you are, white, male, heterosexual, and middle-aged, then by God, you really are a second-class citizen. And there are so many of us. If you are working class, you're a second-class citizen. There are so many of us. We're not just getting two-tier policing, we're getting two-tier everything. And this is one of the things that I think we really need to make a stand on and fight back against. So many people have just said, well, I'm not paying the BBC license fee, for example, because they hate me, right? The BBC hates me. So I don't want anything to do with the mainstream media. I'm not paying the license fee. There are platforms like this, there are platforms like New Culture Forum and all of those things. I can get all my news, and it's unfiltered and it's much more accurate here. That's one thing, okay? The second thing is, if you're getting two-tier policing, then you're getting two-tier education, you're getting two-tier council, you're getting two-tier, local government, you're getting everything. So stop en masse, maybe, paying your council tax. That might be a really important thing to do. Hit them where it hurts. Why should I pay the same as everybody else when I'm being treated differently, when I'm considered guilty before I'm proven innocent?
No, indeed. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at the political climate, right now it feels like there is no official opposition. The Conservative Party has gone missing. And so it is Reform UK that I believe is representing how most ordinary folk feel. As a result, you will be aware, Philip, that the mainstream media has become obsessed with bringing down Nigel Farage. He's been criticised in the most strident terms again today because he's going to go to the US for the second time since becoming the MP for Clacton as the keynote speaker at this Saturday's Keep Arizona Free Summit. Of course, the mainstream media also furious that he's been paid an upfront deposit of nearly £12,000 for the speech. But we have a two-tier media in this country, don't we, Philip? Because it's the weekend, number one. Number two, there are MPs travelling around the world for spurious reasons all the time. And I have a feeling the people of Clacton will be pretty proud of the fact that Nigel Farage is such a big deal in the US. But what do you make of the witch hunt against Farage at the moment?
Well, it just in the latest iteration of this, the latest wave, it started immediately the day after Hare Hills, didn't it? You remember the riots at Hare Hills in Leeds, and I just live really quite near there. And then Alex Sobel, the Labour MP, immediately the day after started blaming Nigel Farage for it, and then we got this ridiculous narrative where all of a sudden Nigel Farage was stirring up social media, so it's all his fault. So we go from this very frightening civil unrest, which we need to talk about and we need to understand. We need to get to the root of what's going on there. No, none of that. It's the same old thing. We just go to the narrative, and it's goodies versus baddies. It's a Manichaean evil versus goodness narrative that we always have. And you just need to pick the villain, okay? And Nigel Farage is always the villain. You know, he hasn't done anything. He was nowhere near there. He was perfectly within his rights as an MP to respond to the outrageous stuff that was going on the street. And yet they just take all of the important stuff away, all of the things that they should be analysing and thinking about and discussing. No, they just move it to Nigel Farage. But the worst thing is they had the Green Councillor of Hare Hills, who's an Islamist and a sectarian. Okay, and immediately the mainstream media are making him out to be a hero. Mm-hmm. So you've got a fairy tale version of current affairs, and it's frightening because it's so simplistic. Okay, it isn't the real world. This is what I was saying before, and I think we both had a taste of this. We're not even talking about policy. We're not even talking about politics. We're talking at the most basic level of what's going on, and are we seeing the same thing? Because 2 days or 24 hours after something happens that's a major event that we should all be concerned about, the narrative moves on to something that is completely different, and it's almost as if it's never happened.
Yeah, totally.
So this idea of I'm concerned about reality. What's going on here?
Absolutely. This is something I have been so conscious of for a long time, and it especially happens any time that there's a tragic event, usually involving some form of Islamist terrorism. Immediately, the authorities and politicians will say after the event, this isn't the time to discuss this, we've got to grieve. So you grieve for a few days. By that point, the police say, well, of course you can't talk about what's going on because we're investigating this. Then the perpetrator is charged, and of course you legally can't talk about it because of contempt of court. By the time said person has got to court and been found guilty, the world's moved on. And what it means is that we never actually have the discussions that we need. And instead, Philip, we're having ridiculous discussions like this in the Daily Telegraph today. Welsh warned over racist buildings. Staff will be instructed in critical whiteness studies. Joanna Williams posted about this. There's something medieval about this declaration that buildings bear the mark of original sin and must be avoided or ritually cleansed with formulaic statements. But as ridiculous as it sounds, this is the sort of thing that the Labour administration are going to be focusing on. It's woke tyranny, isn't it?
It's woke tyranny, and we shouldn't be surprised because they've signalled this for years and years and years. Remember when the countryside, for example, was racist? What they're doing here is they are pathologizing the bricks and mortar of our own culture. They are presenting a history that is, again, a fairy tale. It's one-sided. It's a saga of woe. And the whole scenario is just so absurd, isn't it? You imagine these Welsh librarians thinking, oh, well, what building are we going to meet in? We're going to meet in this primary school. Oh, we can't. The primary school's racist. It's absurd. We know it's absurd. But my fear is that we get used to this. We get used to these stories coming time after time after time, and they become normalized, and we don't do anything about it. We must remember, again, this is the fight back that I'm thinking about very seriously. Okay, every time we see one of these stories, we really have to push back, because it is the pathologization of our culture, and it's bricks and mortar. If the bricks and mortar go, if the buildings go, if the listed building, I'm in a listed building now, if this goes, that's part of our collective memory will disappear, and that's part of our identity. It's so important. As a cultural historian, this kind of stuff really sends a shiver down my spine, because it's obliteration. That's all it is. It's obliteration.
It is. Obliteration, a great word. What I love is that there is one man in the comedy world who is pulling all of this madness together at the moment, Andrew Lawrence, and he has done a brilliant job mocking and pillaring Starmer's performance in Northern Ireland that we started the show with. Let's have a watch.
White working class people are intolerable. They've been brainwashed by misinformation, they're clearly racist, and they do not represent the modern, forward-looking Islamic caliphate that I know that this country can be. So I'm very pleased to be locking them all up. I'm proud to tell you that 2,000 prisoners are going to be released in a single day next month. I'm releasing these prisoners in the interests of public safety. Sex offenders, violent criminals will be released en masse to create vital space for white working class protesters who've been angrily waving Union Jacks about, stealing flip-flops from Shoe Zone, sausage rolls from Greggs, bath bombs from Lush, or quite simply writing naughty things on the internet. So far, we've arrested more than 1,000 people for complaining about mass uncontrolled immigration, and we're just getting started. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to commit any real crime, now is your opportunity, because our police and judicial system are far too busy arresting and handing out prison sentences to my political opponents to worry about actual criminals.
So surreal, but so brilliant, isn't it, Philip?
Well, I mean, I see it, and it's one of those things. It's just so accurate. You know, I'm looking at Starmer, and more I'm seeing this automaton that is just speaking and delivering this ideology and this identitarian politics, which so few of us buy into, and most of us are genuinely frightened of or angry about. You know, so I think that one of the real weapons, you know, we're talking about fighting back, and a lot of this interview has been about fighting back. How do we do that? Okay. One of the weapons we've got is humor, satire, you know, sending this kind of stuff up, and we've got to do it
because it is ridiculous.
But, and also because you may have noticed over the last 10, 15 years that humor and comedy on the mainstream media just isn't funny anymore.
No.
That's the major problem. So it's great that we are getting comedians and satirists who are sending up the people who need to be.
Let's reclaim it.
As opposed to led by donkeys who can only send up the Tory party for 5 years.
And are very unfunny. And what we need is some of that American attitude, because you're completely right. If you look over the pond, it was Dave Chappelle that actually finally proved how ridiculous trans extremism was. It was the South Park creators that finally proved to the world how ludicrous Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.